Okay.
All right,
Great.
so let's start. So, Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everyone. My name is Shrina Makhani, and as president of PMI Pakistan chapter, I welcome you all to the 175th monthly seminar of our chapter. From April till now, we have successfully conducted 3 monthly seminars, 3 Leaders Club sessions, and 4 webinars through our outreach initiatives. Through these virtual events, we have engaged speakers from 6 different countries and participants from 31 countries so far, and hope you will enjoy and learn from today's session also. Before moving on, I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Ms. Hira Nasuleri, our volunteer of Professional Development Education team. Hira is on the board right now. Happy birthday, Hira. I would also like to welcome our new member, Mr. Ibadur Rahman, who joined our chapter in June. So welcome, Ibad. Our today's webinar topic is strategy formulation. It's not strategy delivery, which will be presented by Mike Frenette. Mike has worked in the IT and project management industry for over 30 years. He currently runs the Information Systems Project Management Office at Halifax Water and occasionally provides training through project management. Based in Halifax, Nova Scotia. A self-confessed project management evangelist, Mike specialized in helping organizations meet their strategic goals through planning and execution of projects. He believes that strategic plan alignment, appropriation, initiation and planning and executing the plan while communicating and maintaining high visibility are all hallmarks of successful projects. Mike currently sits on PMI Global Standard Insight team and has been volunteering for PMI at both the local and global level since 1999. Mike is the PMI Leadership Institute Master's Class graduate of year 2015. With this, I invite Mike to start his session. For question and answers, please write your questions in the chat window. And we're going to have our prayer break at 7:30 p.m. Pakistan time for 10 minutes, which is going to be 10:30 Eastern. So over to you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanila. I'm honored to be able to present to your chapter today and to quite a number of people from other chapters and even other countries. So welcome everybody and thank you for joining. I feel honored and I hope you will enjoy the presentation here today. Shanila mentioned that I'm a bit of an evangelist when it comes to project management and also now when it comes to strategy. For many years, I've worked as a project manager and was fortunate enough to be able to take a role with Halifax Water running their project management office and in fact creating their project management office. In fact, they, before I came on board, started a strategic facilitated project where they looked at the strategy for the business and how the information technology division could help with that strategy. So the first step in the PMO was to execute a number of projects, and one of them was to create the PMO. So it was a little bit like sitting on the branch of the tree and cutting it off and hoping you don't fall too far with projects that were starting up while we were creating the processes for running projects within the programs, within the portfolios. So at this time, a lot of what I learned through the years in project management, program management, and portfolio management came to a head and focused on Halifax Water. So I feel like I have some experience in strategy, and also was very interested, and I would highly recommend that you as well look at the Bright Line initiative that Project Management Institute has. There are some wonderful sessions there that are facilitated by some very vibrant and interesting speakers on strategy. And this is where a lot of these ideas come from, along with my experience in implementing the project management office at Halifax Water. So the thrust of this presentation talks about strategy and talks about the fact that delivering on strategy is probably more important than formulating the strategy. So why don't we get on with it? the learning objectives here. If we can get the screen to advance, there we are. So essentially it's about marshaling executive forces to be successful in delivering their strategies. Now, I know a lot of people are project managers on the call today. And I would like you to put on another hat today. I would like you to put yourselves in the shoes of the people who run your organization, if you can do that, and think strategically and think from a business viewpoint. Sometimes as project managers, we focus on scope, time, and cost. And I know that we have the thing called value in the middle of the iron triangle, but sometimes we lose sight of that. So it's all about delivering business value as a project manager. So if we focus on that, and if we think like a business executive, I think we'll be far more successful as project managers. And I don't know about you, but if I make my boss more successful or his boss, then I'm going to be a lot more successful as well. So planning for the successful delivery of the strategy and institutionalizing the products that result from new strategies are the three learning objectives that we have today. Let's start with a little picture. Who here likes dogs? Anyone? Yeah? Is there anybody who doesn't love dogs? I had a little Pomeranian. Unfortunately, he passed away at 14 years of age. He thought he owned the house. So I like this little picture here. So is this a strategy? Is it formulation of a strategy, or is it delivery of a strategy? I'll let you have a look at that picture. It's a dog standing on its front legs with its hind legs in the air, and he's marking a tree. So what do you think? Is this strategy formulation or is this strategy delivery? And Shanila is going to put up a poll there.
Poll is right there.
Thank you, Shanila. Take a few minutes to answer. Maybe a minute. We don't want to bore people. Is this little dog performing strategy formulation or strategy delivery? Okay, so Shanila, if you would expose the results of the poll, I assume everyone who wants to answer has answered. So most people think it's delivery, and some people think it's neither. So let's hear from people. Are people able to unmute? Let's just have a couple of people who said neither speak to that.
So
Why they think
can
it's
raise
neither.
their hand so they can unmute. Those who want to talk about it, can you raise your hand so then we can?
Or you can put it in the chat, entirely up to you.
Yeah. So
No takers? Let's move on. I don't want to keep people waiting for this because I'm sure you're all sitting on the edges of your seat wondering what the heck a dog has to do with strategy and what this hand-standing dog is doing in any case. So I'm happy to say that half of you got it right. From a dog's viewpoint, this is strategy delivery. So the dog, I don't know if they formulated strategy or were born with this strategy, but if you ever see a dog doing this, what they're doing is marking the tree at a higher level than they could do otherwise. If they were standing on all four legs and marking a tree, it would be much lower. What they're doing is pretending to be a larger dog. so that if a larger dog comes along, it won't invade their territory. I don't know how many of you have seen this before, but that's what that is. So from the dog's viewpoint, this is strategy delivery. If a dog can have a strategy. So it's a fine strategy for a dog. It's going to work for a dog, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a dog. I haven't actually seen large dogs come and run away because they thought a larger dog was there, but it might happen. So it's great for a dog. But I have a little story. I worked for a company, and believe it or not, they had a strategy. And believe it or not, they went around to all the sections, all the divisions of the company, and they showed this picture. It was actually one like this picture. And they said, this is our strategy. We're going to act big. And it was so convoluted, I don't even remember what the other part of the strategy was. Was it act big, think small, act big, be small, act big, think, I don't know what it was. But that was it. That was the end of it. There was no delivery of the strategy. There were no projects organized into programs, organized into portfolios to help people understand and help people action how we were going to act big, even though we were small. So this is a dog strategy. It's not going to work for an organization, and it didn't work for that organization either because everybody was confused and didn't know what they were supposed to do. In that instance, the executives of that company had developed a strategy, but they didn't deliver it, and they didn't express it very well. So if we look at a couple of items from the Pulse of the Profession, where we get a lot of, at least I get a lot of good information, they do some fine research and publish it. It says that organizations that undervalue project management as a strategic competency for driving change, those highlights are mine, report an average of 67% more of their projects failing outright. A strategic competency for driving change. That's how we deliver strategy. We organize projects into programs and portfolios from the business viewpoint, and then we provide the organization the resources to execute on those projects, those programs, and inside the portfolio. So I don't think there will be any argument here about that. As project managers, we don't always pull ourselves up out of the project and think the way executives do. I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, if you're not already doing that, that you will be doing that. Sometimes we have to manage upward. Sometimes we have to give a helping hand to anybody in the organization, and that can include managers and executives. So the ROI of maturity, we can see here that, and this is also from a PMI publication, the Pulse. We can see that when it comes to value delivery, organizations that are highly mature in their capabilities outperform those that are not across a number of key project metrics. So we can see that the numbers are fairly substantial. Meeting goals and meeting intent is the one I'd like to focus on. So 77% of organizations that are mature in their capabilities outperformed those. 56% met goals, 77% met goals when they were mature. These are fairly large numbers. So the delivery of strategy is done, or can be done. I'm sure there's probably many ways to deliver strategy, but my premise is that you do that through portfolio, program, and project management. And you do it in a very structured way. And we'll have a look at some more of that as we move along. Here's another little story. And I have to admit, this came from my Leadership Institute master's class and was delivered by the facilitator of the class at the very beginning of the class. it wasn't a story about strategy. It was a story about life, really. But I made it into a story about strategy. The story is that there were 3 frogs on a log. I couldn't find a picture of 3 frogs on a log, so I got 3 frogs on different logs. I hope you guys don't mind. And this log is in a river and it's floating toward a waterfall. The 3 frogs looked at each other and said, "What will we do?" 2 of them decided to jump, and 1 of them decided to remain on the log. How many frogs were on the log when it hit the waterfall? Maybe just put some numbers in the chat. How many frogs were on the log when it hit the waterfall? And where is the chat? Shanila, I can't see the chat.
You can hit the chat button, but I can read it for you. People are responding to it.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
Munaf has said none. Adnan Khalid is saying 1. Ashok 3. Wakar is saying 1. Arishman is saying none. Kenza is replying 1. Bilal is saying 3. So Govinder, Zara, Salman, Daniel, all of them have said 1. Karina is saying 3. Again, Khalid, Robert, Abdul Rasul, Wasim are saying 1. Maximum are 1, actually.
I would like to hear from those who said 3. Why do they think there are 3 frogs on the log when it hit the waterfall?
Okay, so let me,
and
if
if
I
you
would
read
say,
their answers to me.
Yeah, sure. I think I have Bilal who said 3, right? And no, a lot of people are responding. Ashok have said 3, right? Ashok, can you talk about it? Why you have said 3? If you can unmute yourself.
Because you are asking how many frogs in the log.
Okay. Okay, so I'm asking how many frogs are on the log when it goes over the waterfall. Okay, I won't belabor the point. The fact is, the story was that there were 3 frogs on the log and 2 of them decided to jump. And 1 of them decided to stay on the log. The question is, how many frogs are on the log when it reaches the waterfall? And the answer is 3.
2.
It's 3. And the reason it's 3 is because deciding to jump is not jumping. Deciding to jump is strategy formulation. Jumping is strategy delivery. And these frogs only decided to jump. They didn't jump. That's why there were 3 on the log. And guess what? They went over the waterfall. I don't know what happened to them. Hopefully they were fine after that, but we'll hope, because they're nice looking frogs, aren't they? So strategy formulation is not strategy delivery. Deciding to do something is not doing something. This is a life lesson as well as a strategy lesson. If you decide you're going to start a company and you don't do it, if you decide you're going to have a family but you don't do it, if you decide you're going to save enough money for every one of your children to get a fabulous university education and become doctors and lawyers but you don't do it, all you've done is you've created a strategy. You haven't delivered on a strategy. So let's have another little poll here, and it's related to your organization. In your opinion, what does your organization do well? Are they good at formulation of strategy? Are they good at delivery of strategy? Or both? Or maybe they're not good at either of those. Excuse me. I have a prediction, but I won't tell you what it is. Okay, Shanila, would you please expose the results of the poll? Well, I was wrong. I was predicting that everybody would say their organization is great at formulating strategy, but not so good at delivering strategy. And it looks like a lot of people think their organization's good at delivering strategy, but not good at formulating strategy. So I'm a little surprised by the result, but we'll roll with that. Some people think their organization is good at doing both of those things, and some people think the minimum number of people think that they're not good at either. So my premise, and maybe I'm wrong here, and you know, once we get into some discussion, we may be able to illuminate why these answers were as they are. But my premise is that we often do very well at at developing strategy, at formulating strategy, but sometimes we're not doing very well at delivering it. Strategy formulation is not strategy delivery. I don't know how many folks have been in an organization where executives actually go away on a retreat, and they may be gone for a couple of days or a week, and they deliver the strategy for the organization for the next 5 years or the next year, or even sometimes further out. If you don't deliver on the strategy, it's not worth much. For that reason, I say strategy delivery is more important than strategy formulation. Without delivery, strategy is so much smoke. So I see we have a little piece of organizational. You can ignore those words behind there. That says, what does strategy delivery mean? How can we do better at it? And who has to do better at it? So maybe just put into the chat on the first question, what does strategy delivery mean? What does it mean to you? And Shanila, if you could read that back to us, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I don't see this.
Accomplishing the purpose.
Okay, Adnan Khalid says execution as per plan. Corina is saying strategy delivery means doing it or action into the strategy formulation. Manaf is saying meeting the company objectives and goals. Wakar has responded, strategy be delivered through activities that are designed to achieve objectives. Bilal is saying implementation of ideas. Robert has mentioned accomplish the purpose given. Ali Hamad has mentioned output of the project, outcome of program.
Okay, so we're all focusing on objectives. And in fact, that's true. Strategy delivery is meeting the objectives of the strategy and the sub-objectives that are created when we develop the portfolio of programs and projects within a program that help meet the strategy. So I think we were all pretty much agreed on that. What about what we can do better at? How can we be better at delivering strategy? Think about your organization. When a project is initiated, where does it come from? Are all projects in your organization linked to strategic intent? Or are there projects that maybe are not? How can we do better at delivering strategy? Just type in the chat.
Linking the projects with the strategic goals or the strategic direction. So if we just think about why we are doing this project and if it is aligned with the strategy, then it makes more sense.
Okay, that's a good answer, in my opinion. Linking our projects with strategy. And of course, as you all know, that's what I'm driving at, and that's what the entire presentation is about here. Let's talk for just a second here about the third question then. Who has to do better at linking projects to the strategy? Who is it in the organization that should be mainly responsible for linking projects to strategy? Is it you?
So the project manager is responsible, but before that, the business team who is actually coming up with the business requirement should be the primary team, ensuring that the project that they are requesting is aligned with the strategy. But then obviously, project manager should also understand.
So let's go to the next poll. Shanila, please. Has anyone ever heard this before? A PM must always ensure their projects align, ignore that S, with their organization's strategy. Anybody hear that before? I've heard it a lot. So is it true or is it false?
It is true, but difficult to practice.
Maybe answer the poll and then we'll discuss why I asked that question. You may already be able to predict why I'm asking the question. Okay, let's expose the results. Please, Shanila. So, true or false? Is it true that a PM must always ensure their project aligns with their organization's strategy? The answer to the question is true. However, this is the reason I asked the question. It's my premise that if there is a project, it should never have been initiated if it does not align with the strategy of the organization. Therefore, while a PM must always ensure that their project aligns, it is the responsibility of the executive team to make sure that the PM doesn't have to do this, that a project does not happen unless it is aligned. And we need controls within the organization, we'll talk about some of those later, that would not allow a project to just pop up out of the blue, an unaligned project to pop up out of the blue. So yes, project managers have always been told, make sure that your project aligns with your organization's strategy. But how many project managers know the organization's strategy? How many organizations don't communicate their strategy? So how can we possibly know this? And that's the reason I asked this question, because I've seen it so many times. And I always thought, this is odd. Why is it up to the project manager to ensure strategic alignment? Those who formulate the strategy should ensure strategic alignment. And with that, I think we're at break time. Is it 10 minutes, Shanila?
Yes, we have a 10 minutes break for prayers, and we'll be back again after at 10:40. Sorry, yes, 7:40, which is going to be at 10:40 a.m. Eastern then. So it's going to be 10 minutes break, everyone, for prayers.
I'll see you in 10 minutes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Glad everybody came back. Did everybody come back? I can't actually tell. Okay, we'll get going. So the premise that we left with was that a PM should ensure strategic alignment, but they shouldn't have to do that. And we'll talk more about projects and how they get initiated and so on later on in the presentation here. So, are we great at delivering strategy? We might be if we have agreement on priorities at the executive level. So if you look at any organization, they all have divisions, they all have maybe departments, whatever they call them within the organization. There's always a certain amount of money available, and it's finite. I've never been in an organization where the money is available for everybody to do whatever they want to do. As a result, with any finite resource, you get arguments, let's say discussions, lively discussions about who will get the resources. So any strategy is going to have alignment, not just projects with strategy, but divisional or department executives with each other. Some may get very little money. Some may get a lot of money, depending on what's going on in the organization. So that's the first point there. The second one, and if you disagree with any of this, please type in the chat. Or even if you agree, feel free to type in the chat. I've managed to get the chat window displayed, so I'm happy about that. Sufficient executive support and involvement. The key word there is involvement. Has anybody ever heard the phrase, "This will not succeed without executive support"? Anybody ever hear that? I hear it all the time, all the time. Every project, everything we do in a business, we say must have executive support. My premise is that you can have all the executive support you want, but if you don't have executive involvement, it's probably going to fail. We have to define what executive support means. And involvement is a big piece of it. What does that look like? Steering committees, change requests, change control boards, the ability of the project manager at any time to talk with the executive sponsor and say, we have this issue. This is what I suggest for a solution. Can you help me? Maybe it's not the right solution. Executives need to be involved. It's their strategy. They're trying to deliver it. If they're not involved, if they just give it support, that may not be enough. That will not be enough. So involvement. I would like to see our phrase change from must have executive support to must have executive involvement. Then I think we would have far more successful delivery of strategy. The third bullet, planning to enable delivery. What does that mean? That's, you don't just send the picture up out there of the dog doing a handstand and say, let's deliver. You talk about what it means to deliver the strategy. And we're all project managers. We know what that means. We develop project plans. We create a project charter. We create a project management plan. We do some risk analysis. We have a schedule. We pay attention to cost, time, and so on. But that is at the atomic level of developing or of delivering strategy. We need something at a higher level, the programs and the portfolios. An executive should have a portfolio of programs and projects, and they should own it. That portfolio needs to be broken down into programs. And I always say a program can have one project. So I don't have to say broken down into programs and projects really, but that's the way many of us think. So a portfolio is a collection of programs specifically owned by some piece of the organization. So it might be a portfolio of human resources projects. It might be a portfolio of engineering projects. There I am saying projects of engineering programs. And of course, the programs may contain more than one project or only one project. That all has to be planned. So if you have a strategy, what are the portfolios? In each portfolio, what are the programs? Over what time frame are we going to deliver those programs? And for each of those programs, what are the projects or project in the program that need to be executed? And we all know that a program is a series of related projects where if even one of them is not executed, the program fails because the business benefits are not achieved. That all has to be planned, and it has to be planned at the executive level, not to the level of these are the resources executing these activities to produce these deliverables. That's the project manager's job. But at another level, what programs, what projects do we require to meet the strategy? So the light at the end of the tunnel, the big shining star up there, is always the strategy. That's what I mean when I say planning to enable delivery. The next one, willingness to effect operations. Will operations be impacted? Now, you're probably thinking, so what does he mean? A project produces a series of deliverables and they go into the operation and people have to start using them, right? Is that what's going through your mind? Because what's going through my mind is not that. Willingness to effect operations means in the delivery of the strategy, not in the use of the products of that delivery, the deliverables of the projects. That goes without saying. As project managers, we are all very concerned, or should be if we're not, about transition from project into operations. And we've got a pretty good handle on that. I think sometimes we stumble and don't do it well. Sometimes we don't plan for it well. Other times we plan for it very well and the transition is very smooth. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is in any organization, you have experts in the operation. In every department, there are people who know precisely what's going on. Those are the people you need on the projects that form the programs that are in the portfolio. I'm not talking about technical experts, I'm talking about business experts. So how do you get that expertise into your projects and your programs? That is the willingness I'm talking about, the willingness of the executives and executive managers to say, you know what, Mohammed is the best person to put on this project. This is a project about replacing the sewer lines in the city of Halifax in this community. And we're going to reline them. We're not going to rip them up. We're going to use this advanced technique to go through and reline the sewer lines. We need the best person on the project for this. We're going to take Mohammed out of operations. We're going to backfill Mohammed. We're going to hire someone to replace him. And we're going to ask that Mohammed train him and then come onto the project full time. That is, I see Mohammed has popped up on my screen there. It wasn't you, Mohammed Manaf. So that's what I mean by willingness to affect operations. You need the right people on the project to do the job, and often they are embedded in the business. Don't ever make the mistake of saying, we'll put this expert on the project at 20%, and we'll see how it goes. We won't replace them in their operational role. We'll leave them in their operational role. How many people have seen projects fail because of divided attention of the business resources on the project? Anybody? Say yes in chat if you've seen it. Okay, let's reverse that. How many people have never seen that? Say never if you've never seen that. I think we'll have a fairly quiet chat on that one. Usually it's business resources that have their attention divided. Occasionally it's a technical resource like someone who's a data analyst and they're needed on 3 projects. Sometimes that can really ruin a project as well. But very often business resources are not full time on the project and they have their attention divided. We have a number of projects, I think 1, 2, 3, so we have about about eight people that we've taken out of the operation and put them on our projects because we're delivering a $10 million a year strategy with about 50 projects in it, all pieces of programs. So we've taken that many people out of the organization. We've hired that many people in, and they are training. They have been trained, and they've now replaced those people. So the last one, reinforcement of the use of deliverables of the projects, products. Reinforcement of the use of the deliverables, that should say, or the products of programs and projects. So this is the final piece here. If we're great at delivering strategy, then we'll make sure that the products of the project are used. Because if the products of the project are not used, or the deliverables, then obviously we won't achieve the business benefits that we expect to achieve. And of course, business strategy should be developed with business benefits in mind. That's the whole point. Okay. And Mursal Syed says operations team members usually have a different mindset that is optimized for running operations. That's very true. The project mindset is quite different. Projects being temporary things, where people in operations are there in that same role for a long time until they get moved to another operational role or another functional role. They do have a different mindset. And you see that people actually say that to me and to their project managers. This is so different. I have to deliver stuff. I have activities to perform every day. I'm not waiting for the phone to ring anymore. And on the plus side, I'm not faced with this giant deadline every month. If you think of, financial reports being required or payroll needed to be run, and every time we run into an issue, I have to work overtime, massive amounts of overtime. I'm not faced with that anymore unless the project goes south. No offense, John, I'm not talking about the US. So reinforcement of the use of the products of the project, that's about what? What do you think that is about? And think beyond transition to operations. Think beyond that. What do I mean when I say reinforcement of the use of the deliverables or the products of the programs and projects? Type it in the chat. Yes, the last point is the whole benefit of the project, which proceeds at program and portfolio level. Benefit realization. Michelle, you are right on the money. Benefit realization. How many people have read the benefits realization guide from PMI that was put out about 2 years ago? Shanila. Russell Syed, yes, communicating the value of projects to stakeholders so they are keen to use its deliverables. Yeah. So 2 things here. I helped write that guide, by the way, so I'm really disappointed that no one but Shanila has read it. Pick it up. I think it's a very good, it's a different slant on things, and it touches on what Russell Syed is saying here. Communicating the value of the project to stakeholders so that they are more keen to use its deliverables. And it goes beyond that. Thank you, Michelle. Oh, of course, you said benefit realization. I'm glad to see that both Michelle and Shanila have read the guide or at least referred to it. It goes beyond communicating the value. It goes to institutionalizing the products of the projects and programs into the organization. It goes to organizational change management. It goes to executive communication. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So you can do everything perfectly, as you know, in a project and create what I used to call in the IT world shelfware. You got software, you got hardware, you got shelfware. Shelfware is something that sits there, no one uses it. It's great for gathering dust, if that's what you wanted to create. Now, it could be that the project should never have gotten off the ground in the first place. It could be that the project was not strategically aligned and the deliverables of the project were in fact not needed by the organization. There was no value. That could be why it's shelfware. Or it could be that the people did not want to use the products of the project for whatever reason. No one encouraged them to. They didn't worry about not getting a pay increase because they weren't using the products of the project. So all kinds of reasons there. So does everybody agree or disagree with this set of items on this slide? Would you like to add anything to it that you think would increase success at delivering programs and projects that meet strategy? Okay, let's move on. So what needs to change? What needs to change? We need every business unit, those departments and divisions that I talked about earlier. Thank you, Michelle. Inter-business unit communication on strategy. So everybody has to talk about strategy. Everybody has to talk about the priorities. Everybody has to talk about why we're developing a certain strategy. Is it a new product that we're developing? Is it we'll go out of business if we don't do this? Is it we're catching up to the competition? Is it we're dominating the market? Why do we have this thing in the strategy? And then when you determine what it is you have in the strategy, then which of the business units are most affected by it? Which of the business units need to have the programs of projects within their portfolio to make this a success? All that communication has to go on between the business units. And it's not an email. It's not a phone call. They're getting together, they're strategizing, there are workshops on it. This is what I mean when I talk about inter-business unit communication on strategy. And planning of the portfolios of programs and projects. That's one thing you have to plan for. You also have to plan for organizational change management. I don't know how many times I've talked about change management and someone starts thinking change control, or someone thinks of changing programs in a production computer system. That's why I stick the word organizational change management on it. And this is where we get the communication required to make people want to use the products of the project. This is where we get the training that's required and the reinforcement after that that's required. Also, application of resources. We think about delivery of strategy, it costs money. Where's the money coming from? Money is a finite resource in any organization. If you take money from one place to do a project, who's losing money? So there can be quite a discussion at the executive table about this. Where's the money coming from? Who's going to provide the money out of their budget and put it into the project or the program budget? The business resources, the people, we already spoke about that. The people in the organization that have to come out of the business operation and onto projects, and the executive involvement and support, not just support. So what is it that we can do to make this work? Communicating clearly about strategy. The picture of the dog was not a clear communication about strategy. And that's why that failed. Organizing the strategic intent of the strategy into portfolios of programs and projects where each business unit has a portfolio of programs and projects. This might have to do, we have someone who's not on mute, I think there. So every business unit should have this. It might be a particular type of project, it might not be. So the portfolio might be IT, the portfolio might be engineering, the portfolio might be human resources, whatever parts of your organization require change in order to implement whatever it is that the strategy is saying is required for the organization to succeed. In our organization, we started with a roadmap. So this roadmap that you're seeing is an actual roadmap. I got permission to leave the project names on there. The only thing I'm sensitive about are people names, so you won't see people names on these slides. This is a portfolio. If you see an analytics-driven decision making is a portfolio, and it has several programs. One of the programs is called AMI, which is metering information infrastructure. Meter deployment, that's a $26 million project. Another program is analytics and dashboards under the analytics-driven decision-making portfolio of projects. So you can see there are quite a number of projects in that portfolio. This is one way to make visible the programs, the portfolios, and the projects. This is at a fairly detailed level. So this is a result of a strategy session, and these start dates and end dates and so on are very rough at this point in time. So is the budget. So creating a highly visual roadmap of the portfolios and the programs that make it up and the projects that make it up is really important. And this is not a project manager thing. This is not a program manager thing. It's not even a portfolio manager thing. It's an executive thing. The reason it's an executive thing, this highly visual roadmap, is because all the business units are involved in it. If the executives don't create this, well, executives don't actually do the work. If executives don't cause this to be created, then it can't be done at a segmented level. It has to be for the entire organization. I'll show you a picture of our strategic roadmap in a second here. In addition to creating that roadmap, you need to have that executive support. And the way we've done it is we have a committee called the Strategic Planning Committee, and it monitors progress. Every 6 weeks, this committee meets. The committee comprises the general manager and all of her direct reports. So this is not a small thing in the organization. This is a big thing. That committee is intimately aware with what's going on with this portfolio of projects and programs. Let me show you the portfolio. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. Is that visible? If you're looking at this on a telephone, no, it won't be visible, I'm sure. Hopefully you're looking at it on a computer screen. But we can see that we have a heading of portfolio. We have a heading of programs in the second column. And for each of the programs, the green bars are a very high level Gantt chart that's related to the roadmap we saw previously that was filled with data. This is a visual representation of that data. So a project starts and ends at a certain time, and there's a gray piece before that where we start planning. So we start preparing for the project. That's what the gray blocks are, or brownish blocks are, prior to the start of each of the green blocks. And the blue blocks are continuous improvement. So if we deem that a project requires continuous improvement, maybe because we're not entirely certain about the project and what will be implemented, we put a block there that says continuous improvement. But in fact, as we all know, when you create products for a project, there's always continuous improvement, but we tend to focus more on these ones. This portfolio of programs and projects, this visual portfolio, is visible to everybody, every single employee and contractor in the organization. Now, in this case, we're focused on IT. That's why it's called the IT Strategy 5-Year Roadmap. By the way, it's now a 7-year roadmap. So we've got a moving window here. So in this case, it was focused on IT, but we're already talking about doing this for engineering. And in fact, you can visualize if all the engineering projects were in such a roadmap, it would be very, very helpful to the organization as well. This is a closer look at that. The portfolios, the programs, and the projects on that timeline. How many people have such a thing in their organization? Every project in the organization fitting into a program, fitting into a portfolio, and highly visible. Does anybody have that? Marcel says yes. Or Shanila. I'm sorry, I missed that. Marcel did say yes, but Shanila said I agree. Oh, you and Marcel are in the same organization. Okay. You're not. Okay. Okay. How many people don't have this and wish they did? Either everybody has it or they don't have it and wish they didn't have it. So I haven't done a very good job of explaining it if no one wants it. Or maybe everybody already has it and I'm preaching to the converted, as they say. So let's move on. How can we make this happen as executives? So I'm focusing on thinking as an executive here, not thinking as a project manager. Executives need to be really involved. I've said it several times before, but it's an important point. They need to be on the steering committees. They need to be the executive sponsors. They need to be having their finger on the pulse. They need to be totally open to communication from the program managers, the portfolio managers, and the project managers in the organization. Their doors should be open to those people because those people are delivering the strategy they created. And they've provided them, the executives have provided them with the resources to do so. The next thing is having a portfolio of projects shown in this format doesn't tell you, and I'm sure every project manager on the call looks at this and says, oh, yeah, okay, well, that's very high level and everything's green. I don't see what's happened already and I don't see any progress bars on them and that sort of thing. So even though it looks like a Gantt chart, it's really not. So what do we need to let the executives and everyone else in the organization know what's going on with this portfolio of projects? Any suggestions? Quick, easy to follow dashboard reporting across portfolios. What do you have in your organizations?
We have dashboards, quite different from what you have. And in our dashboard, we have 7 keys to project success. And for each key, we have a traffic light. And it's very obvious. One look at the dashboard, you know what to look for, what's moving and what's not, what you should pay attention.
That sounds really good. And let me just say that this is not a dashboard. This is a roadmap. This is something we can look at to say, well, what project is coming up next? So Robert, thank you for that, because it's a segue into my next slide, which is this. Is this the sort of thing that you have? We only have 6 key indicators. You have 7, so I'd be interested in knowing what kind of alignment there is between our indicators and yours.
Michael, did you guys build this, or is this, I mean, this doesn't look like ServiceNow or Clarity or any PPM tool I'm familiar with. It actually looks really good. So did you guys, is this homegrown and something y'all built?
Yep, so there's a story behind that. We were kicking off the PPM project, Portfolio Program Project Management project. That was the first project in the portfolio that unfortunately was running concurrently with other projects in the portfolio. And the executive said, you know, it would be really nice to see how things were going. And part of the PPM project was to implement MS Project Server.
Oh
And
my goodness.
We were
Oh
not
my.
ready. We
No.
weren't ready. Okay. So the executive said, can you do something for us so we can see what's happening with our projects and our programs, because that's implementing our strategy and we want to see what's happening. This, what you're looking at here, is the infamous temporary dashboard that became permanent. It was a quick and dirty project, one of those. Yeah, I admit it. So we do have we have Project Server implemented now, and we have Project Center, and we have the dashboard of all the projects in there. But you know what? The executives fell in love with this.
Oh yeah.
And just try to get it away from them. Not going to happen. But there's something missing in this dashboard. Do you see anything that's missing in this dashboard? Feel free to unmute or type it in the chat.
Well, the project manager's name isn't there.
Yeah, that's true.
And of course, it's not doing earned value, but you probably don't need to.
That you're warm, Michelle. You're very warm, and it's not because of the weather there. So earned value management. What is the? Oh, sorry, was someone speaking?
I was saying that I cannot see the strategic alignment of the projects in this, and which strategic objective it is aligned or not.
Yes, there is an alignment because they can look at the roadmap to see where these projects fall. So it does tell them where they're aligned, not in the dashboard. But you're right, that's not in the dashboard. Also, there are only, someone pointed out, there are only process groups there in the project stage. There are no phases. But what Michelle mentioned was earned value. What is the main premise of earned value? What makes earned value
report
work?
Progress.
Yes,
Progress.
and what progress? Progress
the
on
percentage complete on deliverables milestones.
That's very good. Yes, thank you, Marcel. It is missing in this dashboard. We have percent spent, but as we all know, that means how much? What does that mean? It means nothing. Look at the project at ERP solution.
Yeah,
Anybody notice the percent spent?
That should be red.
Well, it is. If you look over under budget.
Oh,
budget
attention.
Yeah, budget is red. The reason for that is it's a huge project that's going forward without funding.
Michael, may I know you why don't you show the process, the phases actually, instead of process groups?
Yes, it shows only process groups. It doesn't show phases.
Where are the phases? I mean, how can I link the phases of the projects with this dashboard?
You can't with this dashboard, but every project has a project site, and that's where you see that. So what I wanted to point out here was, first of all, yeah, this is great, and you need to have a dashboard. You need to have that high visibility that I mentioned here. Quick, easy to follow dashboard, pardon me. But this one has a fault, and that is it does not show what's been delivered on the project. It does not have that earned value spin. It does not have percent complete. And that's really what's wrong here. 85% complete on that first project doesn't mean 85% of the project has been delivered. That means 85% of the money has been spent, which is the AC, actual cost variable of earned value. The plan was 180,000. The spent is 153,000, but what's the earned value? We don't know. So I would encourage anybody who's going to create a dashboard to get that in there and to have not necessarily use earned value management in a structured way on the project, but have an earned value mindset and get that into your dashboards. That mindset is, what have we delivered to this point according to what we thought we would deliver? That's earned value in a nutshell. Okay. All right. So Robert, is this similar to your dashboard, or did you have something completely different? Don't think you heard me. Okay, we'll move on. So let's have that poll, Shanila, please. What do you have in your organization? Do you know what the strategy is? Do you have the roadmap highly visible? Do you have the dashboard highly visible? These are three really important and critical components, in my view, of delivering strategy. What is the strategy, and how are we doing with the strategy? How did the portfolio of programs and projects link to the strategy? Give it another 10 seconds. Then we'll expose the poll because I know everybody's dying to see what the results are. Okay, Vanna, Shanila. I know that was a reference to an American game show that you guys probably know about. So half of you have a published strategy. Well, that's pretty good. 40% have a strategic roadmap that's highly visible. That's not bad either. 20% have a portfolio dashboard that's visible. So what do you think? Would this help in your organization if 100% of you knew what the strategy was, 100% of you knew how that roadmap, what that roadmap was and how it fit into the strategy, and 100% of you had a dashboard that showed how every one of these projects were doing, including percent complete and earned value? It seems like a moot point because as PMs, we'd love to have all this stuff. But as organizations, I think many of us don't have it. These numbers are actually pretty good. I'm surprised to see the 53 and the 42 on the strategy and the roadmap. So congratulations on that. But 53% is not 100%, and 42% is not 100%. So we still have work to do. So let's just take a minute and just 5 minutes. I know we were going to have more time than just 5 minutes for discussion. What do you think so far? Just type it into the chat or unmute and speak.
Yeah, so as I said earlier in my chat as well, so you are mostly talking about highly projectized environment where project manager and PMO office is kind of, driving the how we are going to execute the strategy. But that's usually not the case. Most of the time, organizations are functional in nature with, even if PMO is established, they usually have, little authority and some weak metrics kind of organization. So you cannot have this kind of execution plan in those organizations. Although the realization is there, but till the time PMO is actually driving the execution of the strategy, this kind of structured project execution is kind of difficult.
Okay, so our PMO doesn't do that. It's the executives who do that. So the PMO was created as the tool to deliver the portfolio of programs and projects that cause the strategy to be delivered. So I just want to be clear on that. PMO did not drive this at all. Totally driven by executives. So if you have an organization that's totally functional oriented and they don't do things in terms of projects or portfolios of programs and projects, my premise is that they should. And that's a pretty radical statement, I know, because there are a lot of organizations that, they don't even have project managers. And I would wonder how successful they are. And I believe there is a lot of research done on this. Of course, PMI has a lot of research. Sometimes maybe it finds the results they're looking for, that everybody should have project managers, program managers, portfolio managers, all working toward strategic goals. Not always the case. Anyone else have a comment on that? Or Marcel, go ahead.
Yeah, another thing that you talked about is the lack of understanding about why project manager should be, driving the project. Is because project management is not considered as a what I should say, specific knowledge area. It's more a generic kind of a skills, and people from functional background considers them to be, having a career in a specific domain, while project manager is a kind of generic skill or generic kind of understanding. So that is one reason why project manager usually cannot drive these initiatives. It always depends upon the other functional managers to drive the initiatives.
Absolutely, the business has to drive. The business have to be the decision makers. The business has to be the strategy formulators. And project managers have to interface so intimately with the business so they understand what's going on, and so they can bring issues to the business and talk about risks and show what's happening with the project and issue the change orders that are required to make the project successful. And I mean, there's a whole agile thing too that we won't get into in this call, but yeah, very good comments there. Anybody else want to say something? We have a couple of things in the chat. Do bad measurements equal bad strategy? I guess if your strategy is to take bad measurements, that's probably a bad strategy. I guess if the measurements show that you're successful when you're not, it's not bad strategy, but it's certainly bad delivery. Most people are only concerned about their work they're doing. That's true. That's true. And when they get exposed to a projectized environment, I'll use that word, Marcel, because you mentioned it, and it's
Michael, I have a question with you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What actually I need some suggestion from you. Usually in Asia region and Middle East and Indo-Pac, we have most of the time technical project managers. The company wants a technical project manager. How do you relate a strategic project manager versus a technical project manager? Because it's very important to have a strategic project manager within some technical domains. Because most of the technical project manager doesn't know about the portfolio level, program level, usually.
Yeah, I often hear people talk about technical project managers, and I'm unsure whether they're talking about someone who has a technical expertise who happens to be a project manager, or someone who's a project manager that focuses on the technical side of managing projects, such as getting the schedule out there in MS Project or Primavera or so on. Technical skills as a project manager. Is there a thing called a strategic project manager? To me, project managers have to think strategically, and I don't believe that having someone in a category called a strategic project manager would work well, or in a technical project manager role either, because to me those things, they don't come together well. I think it's better to pull project managers into the business world and let them have a business perspective. That's what's important. Let them understand what the benefits are that their project is delivering, and plan for delivery of those benefits. We actually are going to talk a little bit about a few more slides, and we are left. I don't have a hard stop, but we do have to finish at some point in time. So thank you for that, Ellie. So how can we make this happen? I think we have to stop ad hoc and pet projects. Anybody see a pet project in their organization? Anybody witness directors or managers who run a project and no one knows about it? It's not part of a strategy. It's something they wanted to do, and they had some extra money in their budget, so they went and did it. Yeah, I saw a couple smiles there.
There was a project manager who I worked with, who is a kind of functional manager, not a project manager. So his philosophy was to first work on a pet project, and if the pet project is successful, then only start it as a formal project.
Yeah. So that takes time, it takes money, it takes resources, and people who do that are oftentimes wasting the organization's time, money, and resources. So my premise is you have to stop that. You also have to be prepared. If the business priorities change, the roadmap has to change, the strategy needs to change, the portfolio of programs and project needs to change. And that's going to be particularly true in an agile organization. And I'm not talking about IT agile, I'm talking about organizational agility. So that needs to be something people are prepared for as well. We have a thing called a project information sheet. And if anybody wants to do something outside the strategy, they have to fill this thing in. Their department manager has to sign it and say, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's bring this before the IT Strategic Planning Committee. Again, our portfolio is about IT. It doesn't have to be about IT. So this causes the person who's making the suggestion to think, what are the benefits? What are the risks? What's the impact on the organization? What might this cost? What are the business drivers around this, and so on? And their director has to agree with them. And only then will it come before the IT Strategic Planning Committee. And I can tell you that very often these simply don't occur. They're stopped. And they said, sorry, this conflicts with the strategy, or sorry, we don't have the resources to do this. So this is how you can stop pet projects in its tracks. And if you find someone with a pet project, well, they should get in a little bit of trouble. So you need to communicate within the organization, how do projects occur? Organizational change management, I'm a huge fan of this. How many people have organizational change management going on in their organization? How many people don't? Just answer in the chat there. I think it's incredibly important to have organizational change management instilled into the fabric of the organization, sewn into the fabric of the organization. We looked at our business resource load. I asked each of the project managers to say, who's on your team, who is a business resource, what amount of work are they having to do? And so they all put that in there, and we came up with some interesting facts and figures about that. For example, our projects are consuming 1,645%. That's 16 resources. 16 full-time resources our projects are consuming. We have 8 full-time resources on the projects, but we also interface with other business resources. That's a huge load on the business in our little organization. So then we were able to roll that up in other ways, look at the projects themselves and see which project was using the most resources. In this example on the screen here, and I couldn't expand this because it shows names, the project called CMMS Enhancements is using, I can't see that, is using almost 2 full-time resources. That's pretty important because this particular project doesn't have an SME assigned to it. So it's having an impact on the organization. And that's just another example of some of those. So let's talk briefly in our final minutes about organizational change management. What are you using in your organization, Sarah? If you'd bring up that poll, please. Shanila? Okay, let's expose the poll. I know it's a little fast for you guys, I'm sorry. And I'm not seeing the results. There it is, okay. Okay, a lot of people, actually it's an even split over Ed CMP and Dale Carnegie, and a lot of people have none. So those of you who have none, really get into change management. Projects are all about change, and if you don't manage the change, you're asking for trouble. And you've probably seen it in your organization. You've probably seen products or projects that have not been used or not used properly. The other thing is benefits realization. There's a thing called a benefits owner that we mentioned in the benefits realization guide from PMI. This is a business person that's appointed to make sure the project delivers the benefits. It's not the project manager. Project managers cannot deliver benefits. Project managers deliver products, which if used, deliver benefits. And you have to get your mind around that. Benefit owner, executive, who is responsible and accountable for ensuring the products of the projects are used because they are the same people who said we needed this project in the first place. And champions within organizations, I think you need to do as well. So on a final note here, and I'm sorry I haven't left time for Q&A, but we've done it throughout the presentation. I hope that's okay with you. If you do want to continue, I am available to continue for another 15 minutes or so. The final thing is your PMO. It's the base of everything. If you cannot deliver the projects that are in the programs that are in the portfolios, then you won't deliver the strategy. And a final note, this is a screenshot of our PPM practice. When you go into the PPM practice, you see how, and we are PMI based, you see how the PMI stuff fits in with the business stuff on the right here. And this piece of pie, if you click on these, you get to see templates and samples and processes, and it's all online. And this is the one visual that shows everybody what goes on in the PPM practice and how to get projects executed and done. And I won't go into the details on the left because of time, but there's a lot of good stuff in there as well. So that's about it in terms of the presentation. I do hope it was useful, and anyone who wants to stick around and chat a little bit more, I'm happy to do that.
Great, thank you.
Really appreciate you all attending.
Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing your time and knowledge with us. I think it's really a great time, and we are short on time, I guess. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us today. And we're going to have this session open for the next 15 minutes after a few announcements. If everyone wants to discuss something, this session is going to be open. There are a few announcements, but before it, I want to say happy birthday, Siftan Javed. He's our past POD member, one of our past members too. So he's in this session. So wish you a very happy birthday, Siftan. There are a few announcements. The recording of today's session will going to be available on our chapter's YouTube channel by tomorrow, close of business day, and although it's a weekend. Our Readers Club session is scheduled on next Saturday, July 11th, at the same time, 7 p.m. Pakistan time and 10 a.m. Eastern, where we're going to discuss Greg McMahon's book, Essentialism, the Disciplined Pursuit of Less, is going to be discussed by Mr. Numan Nasrullah. And for the latest updates on our chapter events, you can connect with us and stay updated through our website, Facebook page, LinkedIn page. Links are displayed already on your few posts which we have shared now with you all. So with this note, we wish you all a safe and healthy weekend, a safe and healthy life with your family. Stay safe and stay healthy. And